If you have a goal of making 25 million, you'd be like, I don't have any evidence for that. But like when you really think about it, there's so much fucking evidence that you can make $25 million. You should pick the biggest number you can because that doesn't like make you freeze. Because the higher level of number you're gonna pick that you can believe in, the higher level of thinking you're gonna have. Hustle is you trying to outrun your own doubt. Like that's why you feel like crap all the time and you're exhausted because you're hustling and you're trying to work, 25 hours a day, you're trying to, all of that craziness. When you believe, you think clearly, you are focused, you know exactly what you need to do, it's a very different approach to your business. And that's why I don't get burnt out. I think we miss an opportunity when we don't develop a relationship with money that's super positive and sexy and romantic. Because it's so much easier to help everyone when you're rich. This is what's so cool about being an entrepreneur. Like if you inherit money or win the lottery, then you lose that money, it's gone. If you earn the money as an entrepreneur, you just earn that shit again. Right? You're just like, okay, you took it away. I still have my brain, I still have the asset, I still have the experience. Like, I don't think there's anything better than being an entrepreneur. Thank you.
So Brooke, hey.
Hi, Ryan.
I want to kick things off with a question about the $100 million goal that you have. I want you to tell the story that you have your goal is to hit 100 million. You're about halfway there right now, and that's in recurring revenue, or like yearly revenue. That's not have $100 million business.
Yeah, I actually, the question that you asked them was like, how much do you want to sell for?
Yeah.
I think a much better question is how much do you want to make a year with a business you love so much you don't want to sell?
Yes. And yours is 100 million.
100 million a year, yeah.
Yeah, and I know, like right now, I never hear you doubt it.
Never hear me doubting?
I never hear you doubt it. But if I remember correctly, there was a time in which you doubted it, that you weren't as certain as you are now. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really certain now, and you don't hear me doubting, but it doesn't mean I don't doubt, right? I just do my work on all that doubt.
Tell me what you mean by that.
Like, I don't, so like if I start thinking like, oh my gosh, maybe I won't make 100 million, I don't then go start talking to people about that, right? That's not what you want to do. I do that work on myself, like that mental work to make sure I get myself back to believing before I put that out in the world. Certainly not going to talk to my friends about something like that.
Would you explain what you mean by that work? The work of
so like if I start feeling like uncertain, which I'm sure all of us do, right? When we're building a business, it's like you start feeling uncertain, like this launch isn't going to work, or I'm not going to be able to make that much money or whatever. That's normal. That's your brain that is always telling you you're about to die and nothing's going to work. And so I just basically write down those thoughts, take a look at them, recognize them for what they are, and then get back to work.
You recognize them as bullshit thoughts that you can change and play with.
Because right now it's equally as true that I could make it or I couldn't. Those are my two options to think. Why wouldn't I think this one? There's no downside. But most of us choose to think this one because we think we have so much more evidence for it, right? And so we think it's more justified somehow. But when you think a thought like, I can make $100 million, your brain thinks at such a higher level, such a better level, creates so much more creative opportunity for you than when you think, oh, I can't do this.
Yeah, and I've wondered myself if it's possible for me to make myself believe something that I don't have evidence for.
Yeah.
And you seem to have that muscle very well developed. Of like choosing the belief and then finding the evidence and practicing the evidence until it is just inevitable and everyone believes you and everything comes to support you.
Yeah.
Is that a fair summary of how you approach it?
I think that's good. I think the other piece of that though is we have so many thoughts that come to us that are doubtful thoughts, that are thoughts like you won't be able to do this or evidence against it, that I just don't entertain, that I think so many people do.
Tell me what you mean by that.
So there's so many thoughts like, oh, this launch probably won't go well, right? Just something like that. Or I'm not hitting my numbers on this launch. This probably means that I'm not going to do it. Like you could spend time in there. Even thoughts like, I'm confused or I don't know or this doesn't make sense. That kind of garbage doesn't serve us. So that's just noise in my brain. I redirect my brain and at least give as much airtime to the positive thought.
Yeah, I've heard you say before, and I love this. It stuck with me. It was, of all the thoughts in the world that I could be choosing right now,
that's the one you're going with.
I'm just going to choose the one that makes me feel shitty.
Right.
Like I'm just going to choose the one that makes me feel disempowered. Like I could choose any thought out of all of them ever created, and I'm going to hang on to this one.
Right.
And as soon as I ask myself that question, it's like, okay, there are other things I could focus on.
100%. And just because a thought is true doesn't mean you need to keep thinking about it. That's the other thing. People think, oh, I have to think this because it's true. My launch didn't go well. Who cares? Stop thinking about that. Think about the next thing. Think about what you want. Think about what you're creating. Right? Just because it's true. That's the other really important thing.
Yeah, but you mentioned this already of we think we have more evidence for the negative thought.
Right.
Right? How are you working yourself into believing the thought that you can't find evidence for?
How do you work yourself into believing it?
Yes.
Well, there is, like, when you think about the 100 million goal that I have, like, you would say, I don't have any evidence that I can make $100 million. Would you say that?
Well, when you say it, it sounds like a ridiculous thing, because I just said of all the thoughts in the world, why would I choose that one?
Right.
So I would observe that.
Exactly. And you would be surprised at how much evidence you can come up with for success. So like you're saying, so like, for example, if you have a goal of making 25 million, you'd be like, I don't have any evidence for that. But like when you really think about it, there's so much fucking evidence that you can make $25 million.
We're talking about it. Like I know there's some of you who are sitting in the audience, and we heard from Moise Ali earlier. And sometimes the temptation to see somebody who had a $100 million exit, and you immediately compare yourself to having a $2 million business, and you think, well, I'm never going to have that. I'm never going to 50x and have a $100 million exit. And so you immediately feel bad about yourself. But in this practice, it would be, well, there's evidence for me sitting on stage.
Exactly.
That person did it 5 years ago when the economy wasn't having as absurd evaluations as they are now, and there weren't all these aggregators and there weren't all these buyers. So there's way more of a platform and a foundation for me able to do this now than that guy had a few years ago. So there's evidence right there.
Yeah.
Like
and Frank Kern would always tell me, if you can make 2, you can make 50. And I just believed him.
Yeah. Do you think that it is easier to believe that dream when other people start to believe it? Like, do you, like when Frank says, if you can make 2, you can make 50. Yeah. Do you relax into his confidence?
Totally.
Like, do you?
Yeah. No. The thing that he said to me was when I said I want to make $1 million a year, he's like, "That's a good start," and I believed him. I was like, "Oh." I knew that he believed that I could make $1 million. So yeah, I do think it helps.
How? Can I ask how old you were when you had that realization with Frank? Because I know that was a big shift for you.
I mean, it was like, what was that? 5 years ago?
Yeah. And so for how long were you in business but operating under $1 million?
12 years.
12 years. So from...
Oh, under $1 million?
Yeah.
No. Not 12 years. Yeah, maybe actually 10 years probably.
Okay, so we'll just say 10 years.
Yeah.
For 10 years, you are doing the thing.
Yeah. About 300-ish. Okay.
300,000 a year. Right? I'm just saying under $1 million. You're
under
$1 million for 10 years.
Yeah.
And then after 10 years, went from I think like 1 to 2, 2 to 8, 8 to 16, and that 17. It took 10 years, but it was really the belief shifting that created the exponential curve.
Yeah, somebody said to me, so I have like a mental model that I use with all my clients for life coaching, and somebody's like, if your model's so great, why don't you just go make $1 million with it? That was the catalyst for me. And I was like, it's not a bad idea. And I literally went and did that.
I get so jazzed about this.
Yeah.
Because we obviously there was a skill set that was being developed for those 10 years.
Of course.
Right? Like obviously you were getting great at your craft, you were building a brand recognition. But the thing that shifted for you was just choosing to believe something and then finding evidence for it.
Yeah.
Which you can do right now.
Yes.
Like, which you can shift anything in your life around now.
And it's so much more fun to believe you're going to make 100 million than to think about your launch that didn't work.
Does anybody want to immediately change their number that they told a neighbor to?
You should pick the biggest number you can because that doesn't like make you freeze. Because the higher level of number you're going to pick that you can believe in, the higher level of thinking you're going to have. So when I went from thinking I'm going to make the difference from $1 million to 10 million, my whole brain changed. Like if I want to make $10 million, I'm going to have to be a different person than if I'm making $1 million. And I showed up differently. I quit drinking. I talked differently, everything changed. I was enjoying making $10 million before I ever made $10 million. When I actually made $10 million, it was like an afterthought. I was like, yeah, of course. And that's what I'm doing with $100 million right now. And I think sometimes people look at me and just think, oh, life coach, that's so cute. But it's really the actual way you get this shit done, is you have to believe in yourself. Because if you believe you're gonna make, what's the difference? Like if you believe you're gonna make $10 million and then your launch doesn't work, but you still believe in your $10 million, you don't care as much. You're like, oh, I guess that's not how I get there. I'm gonna do something else to get there. But if you are trying to figure out how to do it and you'll only believe in it until there's evidence, you'll probably never get there. It's like what they were talking about earlier with persistence. You'll just give up. You'll be like, oh, I guess this doesn't work. But my belief is where my loyalty is, not to the craft or the process of getting there. It's to the belief that I will get there. And I'm willing to get there however is presented, the options that I have.
We've had a brief conversation in the past about when you have a goal and you don't believe it, it feels really terrible.
Feels terrible, yeah.
And the same goal, but you believe it,
feels amazing.
Is just ecstasy.
Yeah.
It's absolutely exhilarating.
Yeah.
And that switch is so precise. Like it's such a delicate edge that can flip you over until you have practiced the actual belief of what it is that you want. But I know you've had setbacks.
But wait, hang on. I want to make sure we talk about this. So how do you know if you're believing in your goal?
If it feels good or not.
Right, and that is really important. So if you're thinking about your business and you feel like crap all the time, you have work to do. Do not work when you feel terrible. Get to your place where you can feel good about it and be inspired with it, and then go to work. So much more.
Say that again for the people in the back.
Okay.
So
pay attention.
Because I once had a mentor. His name was Peter Schaller, who used to say the only work an entrepreneur needs to do is getting into the place where work feels effortless, and it was maintaining a state on which you are absolutely focused on what it is that moved the needle. I heard you say it just slightly different.
Yeah,
when you feel shitty about your business.
I don't feel like my work's effortless, but I feel good about the work I'm doing because I believe in my goal.
You feel positive about the work.
Hustle is you trying to outrun your own doubt. Like that's why you feel like crap all the time and you're exhausted, because you're hustling and you're trying to work, 25 hours a day. You're trying to all of that craziness. When you believe, you think clearly. You are focused, you know exactly what you need to do. It's a very different approach to your business. And that's why I don't get burnt out. Like when I was coming up, building my business from $1 million to 10, I was in a mastermind group with Frank Kern and a bunch of guys that were hustling. And they were just tore up all the time, exhausted, workaholics. And I refused to do that because they were trying to outrun their own, I think there was insecurity. And the other thing was they were trying to prove something with their business, right? And so they were trying to outrun that insecurity. You got to clean that up first, then go to work.
Okay, would you explain what that process looks like?
Cleaning
that up.
Yeah. It's exactly what you said. Like if you're at work and you notice that you feel doubt, you feel uncertain, you feel frustrated because you don't think this is going to work, or you don't think you're good enough, or whatever's going on for you, stop working on that, whatever that is, and sit down and figure out, what are you thinking right now? What is going through your head? What bullshit thoughts are going through your head that you're tapping into that's making you feel that way? And change them. That is the most important work you'll do I think, in your business.
And when you say change them, it is about choosing a different thought and finding evidence for that and practicing that.
Yeah.
Is that
and just thinking that thought and believing it and saying it all the time.
Well, I want you to expound on that, because a lot of times we will choose a different thought and you don't believe it, and so you just keep pounding the same thought that you actually don't believe, and that feels even worse.
But you don't believe it because you still feel crappy. You have to change it, and you can't make it too big, so if you don't believe it, you'll still feel crappy. You have to inch your way up, right, enough so you can believe in a thought to feel good enough to use that as fuel to do your work in your business.
Did you always believe positively about the 100 million?
No, I still don't. I still have to do work on that so I can get to the place where I can then go to work, of course. Like if I already believed I can make, if I truly was already there, I'd be there.
If you truly believed it 100%?
Yeah.
You've said that to me several times.
Yeah.
And I don't fully understand.
It's like when your belief is full, this is woo woo. Like when you're fully believing something, I think it aligns with your creation. And then you have it. But that's why when you actually make $100 million, it doesn't feel like you won the lottery. It feels like Tuesday. Right? Because you've been believing it all along. I've been believing it all along. So then when it happens, it just is like, you know,
I love the story of when you used to think about winning the lottery.
Yeah.
And you, in your mind, you've won the lottery over and over and over again.
And enjoyed that money.
And it was what, $10 million?
Yeah. No, it was $100 million.
Oh, it was $100 million. Okay, so when the $100 million shows up, you'll be like, woo, but you'll have practiced it over and over again where it will feel totally normal.
I mean, yeah, like there are many days where I already feel what that is. That $100 million.
You feel the $100 million? Yeah. And when you tap into that, do you feel like you naturally move faster towards that?
Yes.
And you feel like there's some...
And easier.
There's some moments that you really feel it and some moments that you don't?
Yeah.
And what's the difference in feeling?
When I'm not feeling it, then I feel doubt and uncertainty, and I like my thoughts in my head are like, why even bother? You're already rich. You don't need to do this. Like all that kind of like, and my brain, you know, it presents it to me. It's like, you don't need to do this. This is fine. Why don't you just retire? Just enjoy yourself, right? It's all that kind of, it's like disguised kind of. Because if it were to, I've done so much work on my brain that if it was like, you're not good enough to do that, I would dismiss it. But it like sneaks in like that.
I see.
Yeah.
What does it feel like when you do believe it?
It feels awesome. It feels like a sense of amazing accomplishment. Like my vision is to be an example of what is possible, like to all life coaches, to anyone, to women, to online business owners, to anyone who's been told like, that's cute. Like, you know, you're not as good as, you know, everybody else. Like that feels amazing to me.
So what I'm processing, the reason I asked that question is because I'm thinking about what Mickey shared this morning, like operating from that zone. And I'm reflecting upon what that feels like. And I'm wondering if that feeling is the same feeling that you have when you feel completely in alignment with the goals that you have.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they're exactly the same, but I'm processing them as feeling very similar. And it is simply like unencumberedly focused on what it is your true desire is and allowing that to come out and play.
Yeah.
Now you also, I know, dive into like the tactics and the strategies and the methods, but you don't get romantic about them. It's almost...
No.
So
I get romantic about the money.
About the money?
Yeah. And I think a lot of us are afraid to get romantic, especially women. We're afraid to get romantic about the money because we have to make it very clear that we're not in it for the money. We're in it for the service. We're in it for the contribution, right? And so I think we miss an opportunity when we don't develop a relationship with money that's super positive and sexy and romantic, because it's so much easier to help everyone when you're rich. Right? And so, but everyone's like, oh no, I don't care about that. Like so many of my friends, so many people say to me like, oh, I don't need a lot. And they like literally like visibly do that. And it makes me crazy.
Because there's an assumption in that money is somehow bad.
That we shouldn't love it.
Yeah, but if it's good, and it's like the first thing I ever noticed about you, you were at my house, we were at a little mastermind, and you were like, how do you all make money? Because I love money. I really, really, really love money.
It.
And it was...
And it loves me. And I think that's one of the reasons why, right? Is like when you love money and you're open to it, it just comes.
Because I think you have a very healthy love of it. Like you genuinely enjoy making it.
All of it.
Spending it. Spoiling people with it.
Yeah.
Seeing it. Talking about it. Like it's not a love from like a neediness. It's like a genuine enjoyment of making it, spending it, having it, looking at it, talking about it. And that is playful.
Yes, and I love my work too. I love the contribution that I make and all of that, but it has nothing to do with my love of money. And I think people try and like, oh, I don't care about that. Like, don't ever say you don't care about money. Why would you? It makes me crazy when people say that. They're like, oh, I don't care about money. I'm like, you're an entrepreneur. What the fuck are you talking about? You have to love money. You have to want money. That is like your guideline of how well you're making a contribution.
Brooke, I want to ask you about the early days when you ended up, I can't call it an investment, but you made a big financial mistake. You gave your money away to a cult.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like a lot of what you had.
Yeah.
It just disappeared.
Yeah, yeah.
And you went through like a reset period in which you were like, you had to start over essentially.
No. So that money was money I had inherited. That wasn't money I had earned.
Oh.
Yeah.
So based on that, like it would.
That was the best thing that ever happened to me, though.
That's what I want.
Yeah. Because if I had inherited that money and just lived on that money, I would never be where I'm at today.
Will you expound on that?
Because I gave all that money away. I had to go get a job and get to work and like focus on what I was going to do with my life.
Many people would use that as an excuse to like be defeated.
Oh yeah.
Right? I got all this money, I had it, and I lost it, and woe was me, I'm such an idiot. I did it. And you learned from it. Like you use that as fuel to grow to get where you are now.
I mean, this is deep. I mean, we're going to get deep. So my mother always had money her whole life. She'd inherited money her whole life, and so she never worked, and she was always so attached to don't lose the money, right? And she was so miserable that I was like, I will never be like that. And I think like subconsciously that's why I ended up doing that, because I never wanted money to control me. I never wanted to be afraid of losing it. I always wanted it to just be flowing. And when I gave all my money away to a cult, it was a crazy shit situation that I was in, but I gave it all away, and I remember thinking, it doesn't matter, I'm gonna make so much more than that.
That's beautiful.
And I still feel that way. This is what's so cool about being an entrepreneur. Like if you inherit money or win the lottery, then you lose that money, it's gone. If you earn the money as an entrepreneur, you just earn that shit again. Right? You're just like, okay, you took it away. I still have my brain, I still have the asset, I still have the experience. Like, I don't think there's anything better than being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I know plenty of entrepreneurs, and I've experienced some of this myself,
yeah.
that once you've made a certain amount of money, you go into protection mode.
Yeah.
Because you're afraid of it all going away and going back to where you came from.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of that at all.
But once you've done that and you realize you can do it all
again,
all of a sudden, it's not so scary anymore to lose. In fact, I remember first ever event we had, I asked Gary Vaynerchuk that question.
Yeah.
And he said, not only do I not fear running out of money, I secretly want it to happen.
Oh, I know, I've heard him say that too. He's like, I love the grind.
He's like, the idea of like losing all my money, having to move into like a studio apartment, like with a cockroach, I'm like, you and me, cockroach, like we're gonna do this thing.
Yes.
Like once you've experienced losing it, and that you can get it back, and actually, as Travis said, the grind is the best part.
Yes.
Like the process of becoming and creating is the best part. There's nothing to be afraid of anymore.
Yeah.
Like that fear is completely gone.
That's
but
such
that
a good
mindset
point.
is now freed up, which actually fuels you to go make everything that you want.
Because people will ask me a lot now, like, do you think your confidence comes from having so much money? And no, I don't. I think my confidence comes from having made so much money. And that's a huge difference. Having the pile of money doesn't give me confidence. The ability to make it does. And the ability to make it even before I've made it.
Say more.
Right? So I have $100 million confidence right now that I don't really deserve. Right? Because I haven't actually made $100 million, but I'm already enjoying that. The ability to know I can do that.
You're already enjoying knowing that you have the ability to do that.
Yeah. I'm already enjoying that I know I will do that.
I love that.
Yeah, it's so fun.
Because,
and it doesn't matter what your number is. Like whatever your number is, you have to have a relationship with it like that you're already living into that. Like think about whatever your number is. If you already have that number, what would be different in your life? And everybody immediately thinks of what they would spend their money on. Don't do that. Just because that's not, it's so funny. The richer you get, the less money you spend. It's so weird. But thinking about, like, if I had that money, how would I be different as a person? Is a great question. If I'd earned it, not if you like inherit it, but if you earned it.
Do you mean if you've become the person who has earned it?
Yeah.
What's different about you? I like the story that you tell about this of when you started saying, what would a person who made, I think
$5 million. I was trying to make $5 million. What would a person who made $5 million do differently than what I'm doing? I'm like, she probably wouldn't drink a bottle of Chardonnay every night. Probably not.
Were you doing that at the time?
Yeah. I stopped doing that.
Immediately?
Yeah.
And then started, it was just playing with that question.
There were a lot of other things too. It was like subtle things. Like, would I care about this? Would I even be talking about this? Would I be spending my time doing this? Like, it really made a difference for me.
Now that you are 10 times the level that you wanted to become at that time, you wanted to be at 5 million, you are now at 50 million.
Right.
Is the answer to that question different now when you think about the 100 million?
Oh, what's different about me? Is it different than the 5? Is the difference, 5 and 50 and 100?
Well, like between 5 and 50, and then 50 to 100, is there that much to change?
Between 5 and 50, there was a huge change because I had to stop whining about employing and managing people.
You had to stop whining about it? Is that what you said?
I'm like, someone who has a $50 million business doesn't complain about their employees like that. I was like such a little bitch about it. I was like, I don't want to have to hire them, and I don't want to have to fire them, and I don't want to have to talk to them, and I don't want to have to manage them. I don't want to look like all of that was such a mess. And I realized that I was going to have to set up a company where there was processes in place where people could be managed, and I got over that. Yeah, I started being more of an adult about it.
You did not want to do those things.
No. But I don't think most entrepreneurs do.
I don't.
Not at all, right? Because we just want to keep. The best example I've heard of this is entrepreneurs are hunters. We just want to go kill things, right? And what you have to do is like plant a fucking garden and like wait. You're like waiting for it to grow, right? Yeah. Versus just shooting something and you're eating immediately. Versus like, okay, we've planted seeds, and then you have to wait for that whole process. It's like the difference between a hunter and a farmer. And so I really learned how to be a farmer and be patient and water them every day. And then just wait. Just wait, and it doesn't look like much is happening. And they just don't do it as well as you do, and they don't do it as fast as enough, and they're not smart as you. Like all that garbage I got rid of. You learn to cultivate it. Yeah. Yeah. What about from 50 to 100? I think it's more, for me, getting out of the business now. Really? Yeah. Having it be less about me and more about my team, being able to take over some of those. It's kind of like, I feel like now, and I don't know that this is true, but this is my perception of it, is like, I have to have, there be like mini, like empires within my business. So I have to have like my marketing empire, my customer service, and letting them kind of take that. You know, it's interesting because at each one of those phases, there is a new Brooke. Yeah. There's like a new becoming of an entrepreneur. Yeah. Which is beautiful to watch from the outside. And awful from the inside. It's awful during the process because everything that got you to that point has to now be replaced. Yeah. There's like, I'm experiencing that as like a little bit of a death. Yeah. Like a death of your attachments to who you were. Yeah. If you and everything you were great at that you got celebrated for is meaningless now. You've had to navigate some of that? Yeah, totally. What were you good at? Getting everything done myself. And handling all the marketing and being the face of the business. No one can relate to that. I was like amazing at it, and then all of a sudden you have to delegate that to everyone else, and it doesn't matter that I'm good at it anymore. It's actually encumbering me that I'm good at it. It's like your detriment. Yeah, right? Exactly. Because you want to control the process. Right. Right. But once you go through that process and you have a team that can do that for you, then you're in heaven. That is amazing. To have a business that runs basically itself on the principles that it's amazing to me. Yeah. Are those transitions difficult for you? And I'm asking this because being your friend, I have seen you go through transitions that are painful and that you seem to just glide through them. Like you grieve through them, but then they're over so fast. Yeah. And you seem to just kind of glide through those transitions, and like you're okay with yourself during those times. And I just love to beat myself up over it, over and over and over and over, and keep pounding that drum. Is that just? I just don't beat myself up ever anymore. Is that something you had to get good at? Yeah. So I just refuse to beat myself up. There's no upside, zero. But there was a time when that was not the case. Is that right? Yeah, of course. That gives me hope for life. Yeah. Yeah, that you've gotten better at this, right? When did that stop for you? So for me, it was through a weight loss journey. Like I just hated my body all the time. And one day I just looked in the mirror and I was like, you know what? This is such bullshit. No matter what, I'm going to love my body for the rest of my life. I am no longer going to put up with this shit for myself. And you mean the thoughts, not the weight. Right. You mean the just the garbage, noise. Like you're fat, you're ugly, you're stupid, you're worthless, like all that stuff. I was just like, I'm done. And then I just applied that to everything. Now, I would assume that once you gave up the negative thoughts about your weight, then the weight. Of course. That's so trippy. But then I didn't care as much. It's so crazy, right? Yeah. So like, there's one or two of you right now that beat yourself up over like what you haven't accomplished.
in your business, I would invite for today to be that day that you look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm just done with those thoughts. And if you are like most human beings, it would make sense that if you gave up the negative thinking about yourself and where you thought you should be up to this point, you now give yourself permission to go where you think you should. As long as you're not doing it so that you can get to the level in which you will no longer have negative thoughts. It is the letting go of those that actually gives you the permission to be able to move through that. Would you agree with that?
That's well said. Yeah, totally. And the other thing is a lot of you probably think you have to beat yourself up just to get yourself to do work. That is such bullshit. Like, I used to think I had to hate my body in order to change it.
Yeah.
Beat myself up in order to get to work. Like, be one of those like really mean coaches, like yelling at myself, then somehow I would get my work done. That's not the case. When you stop beating yourself up, you get so much more work done.
Why? So I've had this conversation with a lot of people. They said, I'm afraid that if I am not hard on myself, or I don't, if I heal that wound or whatever, then I won't have the drive anymore.
Yeah, you're just wrong about that.
And tell me where the drive comes from then.
The drive comes from all of the energy you give yourself by actually loving yourself. Like, literally. Like, because here's the thing, if you don't love yourself, you're not going to think you deserve the money when you get there, and you're going to fuck it all up anyway. You've seen this happen to all the people around us, right? It's like, if you believe, like, that's one thing. I totally love myself, and I think I'm amazing, but I think everyone else is too, right? And so, and I think, like, I love having money, and I want to have as much as humanly possible, and I want everyone else. It's so much more fun when you're all rich too, right? We just can have such more of a good time. And I think when you think I need to be rich in order to prove that I'm worthy, and I have to be richer than you to prove that I'm better than you, that's when it gets all messed up.
I think most people perceive rich as a comparative number.
Right.
So rich is how much, not how much I have, but how much more I have than you. How much more I have than everybody else. It's purely an ego game rather than an enjoyment.
And it just doesn't feel like you think that'll make you feel good to be rich, but if that's the reason you're getting rich, you're gonna feel like shit because there's always someone richer. So annoying.
And other people are growing faster.
Right.
Or this person's just starting past me. There's like always a reason to find fault with yourself. Rather than just enjoying it. But when you enjoy it, you're always free to go make more.
Yeah, and I'll explain. I bought a penthouse in downtown Austin on the 53rd floor. It's fucking beautiful. The view is ridiculous. And I get up in the morning and I'm like, hell yeah. I'm like, you did this. You earned this money. You are amazing. Like, I enjoy my success so much. Like, I don't think I'm better than anybody else at all. I just am super happy to be me.
I really want you to tell me that you had to work at that.
Work at doing that?
Like, work at being always positive about that.
Of course, yeah.
Because my natural tendency is like, wake up in my multi-million-dollar house and be like, I'm bored with this. I should buy a new one. And immediately
I do that too. I don't say I'm bored with this. I'm just, let's add to it.
Okay. So I literally showed up at a yoga class once with Brooke. And like, it's, quiet time before, and she leans over, she goes, I just bought a $6 million house because I'm loaded. It's awesome.
Why not?
And it was awesome.
So, I celebrate everything I spend money on. Like, I feel like a lot of rich people don't want to talk about spending money, and that like, we went on a private jet, we had everything on there, and then we went to this place, this hotel, and it was like $1 million a night. Like, I don't say that to say I'm better than anyone. I just think it's so fun. And like, why not celebrate your success? Like, why are we pretending like that's a bad thing to do? I don't understand it.
I love hearing you talk about this.
Yeah.
Because that's totally in me. Right? That's totally in me to like hedge a little bit, which just says that like I still have stuff to clean up there.
Yeah.
And when I think of that stuff on my own, I think like I have something to clean up there. That's more work to do. But when you say
it's like you do that work and then you feel so much better.
I know. Like when you describe it, it's like it's so much fun to think about who I am once I clean that up.
Yes.
Like it is so fun to be in that place.
Yeah, totally.
And to celebrate your success and to take a shower full of money. Like, I mean, that's like it's
Did you
so
say take a shower?
Is the best example that I could.
How do you do that? I'm down.
Well, so Mickey Agrawal talked about how difficult it is to wash yourself with paper, toilet paper, I thought you was talking about money. So on the break, it
that's
just didn't.
Awesome. I love it.
But it's so freeing to think about, like, just pulling out that thorn and being that person. But when you say it, it makes me realize that I still have that to do, and it makes me want to clean up all of that.
Yeah, because I think in a podcast I had asked you, what's it like to be rich? And your answer was kind of like, I don't know yet.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, you are rich. Like, why aren't you enjoying?
Because I don't feel it all the time.
Right.
Because once you reach a certain level of success, that needle just moves.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's not yet. It's late. It's when you make this much. And you get there, it's like, well, it must not be that. It's when you make this much. But you're like, I made this much party, and that's why it's like 1, 2, skip a few, 99, 100 million.
But I was taught, like, I'm so obnoxious. Like, when we go out to eat, and I'm like, I'm paying the bill, because I'm rich, and that's it. And people are like, oh my God. Some people are like, what? What'd she say? And I'm like, yeah, I said I was rich. That's what I said. Very fucking loaded. I'm paying the bill. But I was doing that when I was making $1 million too, right? I was just always in like, I have so much money, I have so much abundance, I want to be so generous. So I just love that space, and I love it when everybody's in that space, right? It doesn't matter that like I have more money than you, because we're both rich, right? Let's just enjoy being rich together. Is kind of how I feel about it.
I love that. It's like, does anybody want to like run a marathon right now?
No. Right? I mean, that's the thing. It's like you probably are in your mind. I think you've told us this before. Like when you hang out with me and Alex and Leah, it's kind of like you feel less. But we're all 4 of us are fucking loaded.
Well, what I've told you is that being around the 3 of you, I notice myself playing the comparison game.
Yeah.
It comes up.
Right.
Like, I see what junk I'm practicing.
Yeah.
Because like we're all rich and the levels are a little bit different.
But see, that's the difference. You're comparing it.
Yes, that's right.
Right? But
totally guilty.
You got to drop all, like, that's the stuff that like makes you think you're not good enough.
I think you're completely right.
Yeah.
Right? And I think it is tempting, especially like just in an environment like this. You see somebody on stage and you hear what they're making or what their exit was, and to immediately play the comparison game. But instead you could just use it as evidence. Just like, well, there's another piece of evidence that shows that it's possible. And like when you can get to the place where you're genuinely just pumped for them, you're probably ready for you to just cruise right into that.
When I see people on stage that are amazing, I'm like, we're amazing. Entrepreneurs are fucking awesome. Even if they're making so much more money, I just put me right in there with them.
Do you never feel the comparison come up?
Not really.
I need you to keep talking right now.
Like, I remember when Amy Porterfield, who's like one of the women that I was working with, like she talked about making $1 million a year, and I was like, holy shit, we can do that? That's allowed? Like, I was like so excited. I was like, what do we do? I'm in, right? I never thought like, oh, she's doing that and I'm not. I'm like, oh, we can do that? Like, where do we get that?
That was an automatic thought?
Yeah.
And, that's wild. I'm realizing something in my head is that there have been periods of my life where I responded in that way, and there have been periods in my life that I did not respond that way.
Yeah.
And the times that were different were circumstantial. So I had evidence to doubt myself, and I was practicing that. So somebody else did it, and I said, you can do it.
You have to hear what he just said. I had evidence against myself, and I was practicing that.
Yes.
It's a fucking ridiculously stupid thing to do.
I'm completely aware.
Stop doing that if you're doing that. Yeah. I was practicing that. That's why would you practice sucking
You're
at
beating
something?
That drum in your brain.
Yeah, it's terrible.
You're like caught in that thought loop.
Yeah.
And I'm realizing now that when I've been in that mode and somebody else does something great, I say, that's great for them. And I see a separateness.
No.
But when I am in the state that you're talking about of finding the evidence, they just slip right into that.
Yeah.
They're just another piece of evidence.
Yeah, that it's possible that you can do it. Yeah.
Over and over and over again,
yeah.
which feels awesome.
Totally.
Right? Because in that mode, every day I can wake up and find evidence for it, and more evidence for it, and more evidence for it. And like every annoying social media post from somebody that pisses you off can be evidence for the and you can choose anything that you want. And
I was thinking about this, like, be careful. Like, if somebody's making a lot of money, don't be like, oh, that fucking guy, I'm smarter than that guy, better looking. Like, don't do that, right? Don't disparage them.
That's comparison right away.
Like if he can make that much money, so can I. No, it's like, hell yeah, you're making money. I hope you triple your money and I'm coming too.
Yeah, like that person is evidence of how easy and fun
totally
it can be.
Yeah. And I'm always celebrating other people making money. It's just the humans making cash. I have this belief that every human has a huge pile of cash and we either claim it or we don't, and it just sits there if we don't. That's what I think. So when you're claiming yours, I'm stoked for you. It has nothing to do with me. I'm just stoked that you're doing that, and I'm going to get mine too.
God, I love you.
That's good, right? I love you too.